Privatize the fire department, privatize the police department, privatize everything.
Yes, privatize everything. That's our show tonight.
And now, John Stossel.
Privatize everything. Okay, maybe I didn't mean that. I got carried away. There are some things government ought to do, but just a few things. Most are listed in here in the Constitution. But note that this is thin. This makes it very clear that there's not much that the founders thought government should do. In fact, this is mostly about what the federal government should not do. And the founders were right, because most things work better if the central planners butt out, leaving individuals more freedom of choice. And that happens when we leave things in private hands. So how much can we privatize? What should be privatized? Len Gilroy studies that for the Reason Foundation. So what, for example?
Things like changing the oil in vehicles, sweeping streets, trimming trees, things like that, where many cities are paying public employees lavish salaries and benefits to perform functions that you could easily compete out to the private sector and get better bids.
But why do you get better bids in the private sector? Why can't the government employees do it cheaper, better?
Well, that's a great question. It's simple. It's because in the public sector, you have a monopoly. And when you have a monopoly, by definition, you don't have competition. Absent competition, you don't have any pressure on prices. So when you actually go to a competitive bidding system and you have the private sector competing to provide services for you, what you tend to do is drive down costs and improve service quality. And that's what we find, that when you do this process right, that's the outcomes that you're going to get. Lower cost, better quality.
You published this privatization report. You say Washington State privatized its state-run liquor monopoly.
Yeah, one of the things that many people across the country don't realize is that there are still today 17 states that since Prohibition actually own and operate their own liquor retail and or wholesale operations, meaning they either have government-run liquor stores or government-run trucks that deliver liquor to stores.
After Prohibition, states said, well, this is a dangerous drug and kids will get it, there'll be drunk driving accidents, we have to control it.
Right, so that was the original rationale. What you tend to see today is that
you see the same thing now with marijuana legalization.
Right, but what's interesting about that is that you don't have any states clamoring to actually operate that themselves, which is different from what happened after liquor. Washington State was one of those that for many 70-plus years had its own state-run wholesale and retail monopolies. Voters voted a couple years ago to dismantle that, and one of the things that is interesting is after we've been through a year now, and if you look at the results...
And the critics said, kids will drink, there'll be more car accidents.
And what we've seen is that that has not panned out. You have fewer DUI-related incidents, accidents, arrests. You have fewer DUI fatalities. You have underage drinking is flat. That hasn't changed. And so the sky didn't fall.
California hired a company to run public parks.
Today, you have about a handful of parks where the private sector is charging the same fees that the state was charging to let people in and to do camping fees and things like that, but they're paying the state for the privilege of doing that. So instead
the state, which was losing money, is now making money.
Right.
But this is what people would say, this can't be, because the company makes a profit.
If you have a company making a profit and they're saving you money at the same time, that gives you a sense of how inefficient the public sector can be.
In Chicago, a Democratic mayor, Rahm Emanuel, lowered recycling costs by causing competition between government workers and private workers. Explain.
You allow the public employees and the private sector to actually compete against each other. And so in Chicago, Mayor Emanuel broke up the city into different zones, and he kept the public sector in some of them, and he bid out the recycling in some other parts. So you actually had a real-world competitive test case. And what happens is, again, competition, just by bringing in the private sector, the public employees realized that they were going to have to step up their game because all of a sudden there's encroachment into their turf, so to speak. And what happened? Over 6 months, they saved about $2 million after just the first 6 months. This is coming out of this is reported by the mayor's office, and they reduced the overall cost by 35% over a 6-month period. And so that prompted the administration to decide to look at other opportunities to apply that kind of managed competition model.
And this is happening all over. Space flight. Now the best stuff is being done privately, and they're doing it for much less. Paving streets, graffiti removal by cities. Louisiana privatize public hospitals.
They're still in the transition phase of that, but what they've already found is that they're getting improved patient outcomes, reduced emergency room waits.
Really? The private operators aren't killing people with neglect?
No, in fact, they're increasing the access to cancer screenings, giving better preventative care, reducing waits for prescriptions and appointments and things like that. So just in a few months, they've already seen a dramatic turnaround.
What woke me up to the benefits of private companies running what I thought had to be run by government services was a report I did years ago on the Jersey City Water Department.
In much of America, city water departments have let the pipes rust. In Jersey City, New Jersey, it got so bad the water didn't taste good, sometimes failed government's own tests, and kept getting more expensive. City workers told Mayor Brett Schundler there wasn't much they could do. They couldn't even slow the price increases.
We said, can't you get the costs down so we don't have to increase rates? And they said no.
Can't be done. It's an answer heard in bureaucracies everywhere. So Schundler did something unusual. He put the water contract out for bid, and a for-profit company won. Within months, the private company had fixed the pipes the government couldn't fix.
But how can you trust the drinking water to some outside private company?
The reality is our water is safer and cleaner than it's ever been before.
For the first time in years, the city's water met the highest standards and for less money. The private company saved taxpayers more than $100 million. Now, of course, some private companies are bad. I can hear one of you viewers saying, oh, Stossel, you're just cherry-picking the good examples, and maybe I did there. But the difference with privatization is that if they're bad, they get fired. They go out of business. So over time, there'll be fewer bad water departments. By contrast, government workers never fire themselves. I asked the mayor of Jersey City this about his new private workers.
What if they screw up? They're fired. They're toast. I don't care. If they blow it, we're going to give the contract to somebody else.
That focuses the mind.
Yeah, they say there's nothing like a hanging, the prospect of a hanging, to concentrate the mind.
These men worked for Jersey City Water when the department said it couldn't be done. Now they do what couldn't be done.
Are you working harder now?
Yes. You're always on the go. Every day something different.
So were you goofing off before? Sitting around, drinking coffee?
Well, occasionally, yes.
It's not often that government workers admit that.
Since 2000, there have been about 4,000 plus water-related contracts that have been up for rebidding, and 93% of them have been renewed by the public sector clients. That indicates an extremely high level of satisfaction from the cities and counties and jurisdictions that contract out their water and wastewater services.
Thank you, Lynn Gilroy of the wonderful Reason Foundation. Now, the other side.